All right. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our career fair. And we are on day one, and I'm super excited for our next guest, Breanna. She is a hairstylist. She works in the beauty cosmetology industry. And so we'll ask a few questions towards the end, but I just kind of want to waste no time and turn the mic over to you and learn everything you have to share with us.
Thank you so much, Blake. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited to share everything. I've put together a presentation that's going to be about the history and some of the evolution of the hair and beauty industry. And at the end of it, it'll kind of talk about the different avenues that you can take within the hair and makeup industry and stuff, and where you can go from there. So I'm just going to screen share here. So, starting off, like I said, history and evolution of cosmetology and barbering. So, we are going to start in ancient Egypt in the beginning. So, cosmetics were always used as a really important part of not just their daily life, but also for religious purposes and for ritualistic purposes. Not only women used cosmetics, but also men as well. And this signified a level of cleanliness. They were really big into appearance. Egyptians were really, really big on how you presented yourself to the world. So they a lot of times made their own eyeliners out of coal. They would mix together certain oils with coal. A lot of times they would grind up things like malachite to create these eye shadows or these eyeliners. And they would also use things, excuse me, such as red ochre and different vegetables to create the rouge on the cheeks. And so a lot of natural elements, but things that we've also discovered that might not be the best going forward into this day and age. And so, also in ancient Greece and Rome, they were really big into cosmetics and hair care, and a lot of times used like olive oil and honey. Honey has a lot of antimicrobial properties, so it helped with curing a lot of sort of like eczema or acne and things like that. And olive oil was used in the hair as well as on the skin to moisturize. And they also did things like they would mix together olive oil with black incense, and that's how they created a lot of their smoky eye look. The Greeks and Romans also used a lot of lead, which is not the best thing to use, but they use lead and mercury as like foundation powders and things like that, or to create a natural highlighted effect. Another thing was barbers and cosmetologists were actually really high up as far as how they were renowned in society. Not only because of the fact that appearance was a huge priority, but because they were also known as kind of medical professionals. Barbers back in the day were actually seen as barber dentists. They would do tooth extractions. And later on, we'll get into some of the history in the next section. This little object, though, that I put in the picture is used to scrape the sweat off of the skin after they would work out sweat and the dirt and stuff. So this was another object that they would use in order to keep things and themselves clean. And so going on to the Middle Ages, cosmetics really weren't as favored back then and kind of came back around the Renaissance era. But during this time, barbers were actually still performing these surgical procedures of tooth extractions, and bloodletting became a big deal. During that time, bloodletting was due to the fact that the more gaunt or lighter or fairer skin you were, it was known to have a higher social status. So you would go to your local barber to get a tooth extraction and have your blood let so that you looked very gaunt, and your social status would then increase at that point. And then moving on into the 20th century, um, this at that time now we discovered, as time went on and science became more evolved, we learned, okay, the spread of disease, and we're essentially touching other human beings. So the Department of Consumer Affairs came in. They started a regulating board to regulate and make sure that the public was actually being properly cared for. And so this is when beauty schools and such came into play. And there was actually um, more widespread treatments that were being offered. So back in Egyptian times, they used to do sugaring with honey and sugar to do their waxing, and that's actually now used. But we now have other properties that we use to do waxing and to do makeup techniques and stuff. And then things like perming were introduced and hair color. There were hair coloring back in the Egyptian and Roman times, but this was mostly like berries. It was more of a temporary thing. They did use henna dyes, but again, these did not last very long. So coming into more of like the permanent hair colors and perming the hair and really changing the structure of the hair, this really came into play around the 20th century. And then moving on to the difference. So there is a little bit of a difference between a cosmetologist's licensing and a barber's licensing. Within cosmetology, you're studying the hair, skin, and nails, and the application of cosmetics to the hair, skin, and nails. And you're really dealing with the surface area in both professions, barbering and cosmetology. But in the barbering field, they are licensed to use a straight razor to do shaves. Cosmetologists are not. Cosmetologists are licensed to do nails, barbers are not. However, they are licensed with the same thing as far as cutting and coloring hair. Both are able to perm, do facials, and so forth. So there are some little differences in their licensing, but the biggest distinction would be that nail care and straight razors. Um, so moving on to industry professions. So there's quite a few professions now that you can get into within the beauty field. It used to be, back in the ancient Roman times and so forth, they're doing hair and skin and cosmetics. But now there's things like lash artists where they're doing lash extensions, they're doing permanent makeup. You have freelance work that you can do where you're working on films and runway and weddings and doing editorial photo shoots. So, kind of going into a little bit of that platform artistry work and education kind of tie in. Usually, when you're doing platform artistry work, you have a model on stage, you are performing a service on the model, and you are essentially educating the audience that's out there, as opposed to just an educator, or not just an educator, but an educator in a school where, or a beauty facility where you have a class that's actually just inside of the classroom. So the educator and the platform artist are both performing educational services just in a different setting. And then next would be your salon barbershop owners and your aesthetic owners. These can range in the types of facilities, and we'll go into that too. So again, just showing some photos here of the different aspects of hairstyling and barbering. So with barbering, there is a lot of styling in it. Over here, where this guy is creating a pompadour, he's hairspraying it, he's had to blow dry that out. So it's not just in women's hairstyling that we do the blow drying and applying of the products and creating styles. The other thing, the straight razor, a lot of men love to get the straight razor shave. It creates a really nice clean shave, lasts a little bit longer than doing it at home. And it can actually prevent a lot of those ingrown hairs because they're going at the correct angle of your hair growth. So going to a licensed barber for your shave, there's a lot of benefits to it. It's relaxing, but it's also preventative. The other thing, like I said, both professions are able to cut hair. Both professions are able to provide skincare services and hair coloring services. However, again, the straight razor and the nail services being the difference between the two. Next up, we have makeup artistry. So within the makeup field, there's actually a lot of different avenues that you can go with this as well. There's not just traditional beauty makeup that you can do that's, for proms or weddings or just for family photos and such, but there's also character makeup. So the Joker is a good example right here, just because you can really transform somebody with makeup without having to use special effects and creating using those highlights and shadows in order to really take their face and create a different look or shape on camera. Now, getting into special effects, this is more of a specialty within makeup artistry because you are using different mediums to create these masks. Sometimes you're going to just apply different applications to the face. Other times you're creating a whole sculpture within the body and on the whole entire face. So there are different aspects between character makeup and special effects makeup. Another one is doing editorial or avant-garde makeup. And a lot of times with avant-garde, you are going to have one main focal point. So you can see her skin is really, really clean. Her lips are pretty nude as well, but her eyes being that focal point there. Sometimes this will be that just the skin is the focal point, not necessarily eyes or lips. Sometimes it's the lips, sometimes it's the eye. So usually with avant-garde, there's going to be a main focal point within that artistry, and it's going to usually translate better within editorial. There are some times that this is done with runway work as well, but I will get into kind of the distinctions of when that's going to be used. So in the aesthetics field, there are also multiple routes that you can do. So there's not just facials and doing peels and such, but there's also the ability to do the lash extensions. There's lash lifts, which is essentially perming the eyelashes. And now California has just brought back eyebrow and lash tinting. So it's basically applying like a safe hair color for your lashes and for your brows. So you're able to enhance those lashes and things as well. Cosmetologists are also able to do lash lifts, brows, tints, as well as extensions, but generally I see mostly estheticians kind of going into this field. Another one would be a medical esthetician. Medical estheticians generally take a little bit more training than a basic esthetician, and you're going to usually work at some sort of a medical facility. So this can be at hospitals, this can also be plastic surgeons' offices, and other places where they do like PRP facials, which are where they have either a doctor or a nurse practitioner who can draw blood and they use your plasma to do these facials. So they go a little bit more in depth in how they can penetrate into the skin and the procedures that they're able to do with their licensing. Again, with the permanent makeup, there are some cosmetologists that get into this as well, but I am seeing a lot more estheticians doing more of the lash extensions, lifts, and tints, and the permanent makeup, as they are usually working more on the skin. And then one more area of specialty within aesthetics that you can do is waxing and hair removal. So there's threading, there's waxing, but hair removal in general is the idea that you are removing the hair from its follicle and that the removal of it is done with a clean, where you're pulling out the entire follicle with it, you're not breaking off the hair. So you are a specialist in removing the hair and understanding how that works with different skin types as well. Getting into the nail artist. So there are a couple of different things with nail artistry. So you can get into nail artistry to do all of this fun, really cool stuff. They make sculptures on nails. As you can see, they can create different designs, incorporating things like chains. Sometimes people will have little charms that they can hang off and so forth. And this is one of the fun, creative aspects of doing the nail tech or nail artistry portion of it. However, there is another side to it, which is you are a nail technician. So you are essentially caring for the nail. So a lot of times when you're doing pedicures or manicures, you're taking care of the health of the nail as well. So sometimes there will be clients that are really prone to ingrown toenails or ingrown fingernails. By going and getting regular manicures and pedicures, it's preventative and it helps to avoid that happening, which prevents other health issues, which can ingrown toenails and fingernails can cause infections and things, and can also go all the way into the bone if they're left unattended. So it's really important that you understanding, the nail technician, they do also provide that health aspect to it. But it is always nice to go and get your feet done, go get your manicure done, get your nails done, and just be pampered as well. So they do provide that luxury aspect too. And here we have more of what I call freelance work. So a lot of times with these sort of weddings, film, editorial, and runway, we call them gigs, a lot of times this will be independent contractors or people who are able to bring their own tools, their own supplies, their makeup kit. It's not a company that's supplying this for them, and they will bring their things or their items in order to perform the job. And so what happens, so during weddings, when you're setting up, you're going to come in, do the bride's hair and makeup. Here we have on a film set, you have one gal that's working on the sculpting of the hair here, while the other gentleman is just really fine tuning those hairs. Oops, sorry, let me go back one. And the thing with film and editorial is the camera is going to pick up all of the little details. So what you're seeing yourself, you're like, oh, that might not be okay. The camera is definitely going to pick that up. So say, for instance, in this editorial look right here, she had a strand of hair coming down. the camera is going to pick that up, and that is something that's a little bit harder to Photoshop out of there. So when performing hair and makeup artistry for film and for editorial, it's really important that your looks are really clean and precise, and that there is what we call continuity, that things are staying consistent. Now, this is especially true for film, within the film industry, because things are not always filmed consecutively or continuously, I should say. There is what's going to be called, and I'm going to hold one up here, it's called a face chart. And the purpose of your face chart is you can actually write down on the side here all of the makeup items that you use, hair items that you use, where it was applied, and then kind of drawing it onto the face to show. And a lot of times when you're working on a film set, you're going to have those face charts. You're going to take lots of pictures to make sure that you're continuing to have the same look throughout each frame. So again, film, editorial, really important that you have that really clean, precise look going on. Now over here we have runway. And before I was talking about avant-garde looks. Now with this runway look, she does have some avant-garde going on. Now it's not her eyes and it's not her mouth that's the focal point, but her skin. Her skin is very muted throughout the whole thing. And the purpose of this is to allow the headdress or the headpiece and the clothing item to be what's really the thing that's coming out. The point of the hair and makeup when you're doing runway is to complement the fashion item that they're presenting. So if the hair and makeup is overpowering to that, then it kind of takes away from what the runway is supposed to be doing. But essentially, you do want to have something that does not only go cohesively, but is a little bit eye-catching or gives you that kind of or aha factor. So that way, as it's walking down, you're really focusing on the piece itself. Because the whole piece from top to bottom is usually an art piece. And the other thing with avant-garde having that main focal point, a lot of times, if it's just simple line work, that will not translate onto a runway like it will onto editorial, because a camera can pick up all of those, again, those fine little details, just like if there was a hair coming down. Whereas if you do avant-garde on runway, it's on a moving object, so it needs to be on a larger scale. So there are some differences on the application of it and when it's used and so forth. Then we have our educators and platform artists. So in here, this I would go so far as to say is this is actually a professional class, whereas this would be more of like a beauty school class. Now, the reason I say that is because in a facility where they're having a professional training, they will have multiple artists set up doing different techniques. One might be doing a hair coloring technique, one might be doing hair cutting, and you're able to walk around and go to each of these and learn from each of these educators while you're walking around there. Through the educators, now this would be something more like platform artistry work. Educators within the school setting, usually they're going to have the students come up pretty closely, looking at all of those little details again as to what they're doing. Right here, it looks as if she's sewing on a weft onto this head. And so they are probably watching how she's doing the sewing technique to make sure that their stitching and things are appropriate and that they're locking in appropriately. Up here on the right, we have a platform artist, and you can see by the background of this picture that she's more than likely up on a stage. She's demonstrating her foil placements here. She's more than likely talking to the audience about either A, why she's placing her foils there, or B, the mixture that she's used, or C, all of the above. And then maintaining that client safety throughout that time so she does still have a drape on her client. And then over here, again, another platform artistry work, but using, instead of hair color or sewing in wefts, he's doing more of an updo style. So another thing with hair is you're not only creating color and creating different shapes, but you're actually sculpting the hair when doing updos. So there is some sculpting in there, there's coloring, there's painting. So it's essentially artistry just on a different canvas than, say, a white canvas or on a piece of pottery. So you're looking to make sure that there's balance, that you're creating movement within the hair, and that the eye is catching the light at the right angles as well. And then last on here, we have our salons and barber shops. So here we have more of like a beauty bar setting. When you're coming in, these higher chairs are better for like makeup applications, or if you're doing someone's eyebrows, not necessarily Waxing, you want them laying down, but if you were to do threading or something of that nature, you can use something more like a beauty bar. And up here we have a barber shop, distinct differences being these chairs. You'll notice the barber shop up here, the salon down here. The barber chairs are a little bit heavier duty, a little bit sturdier. And a lot of times this is because they lean all the way back. That's what this little lever is here for. So that way, as they're doing those shaves, they can actually get a little bit closer and make sure that they can get underneath the neck as well. Stylish chairs, they have a pump down here, just like a barber chair. However, a lot of times they don't lean back, so they're not going to be as heavy duty, but they do raise, they do spin, and this is all to make sure that you are able to move your client around and also move around with your client, so that way you're able to produce a great haircut or color or service on your client. Up here, we have more of like a spa-like setting. So this is where you would normally do facials, massage, facials, which is basically a facial on your back. And so this is going to be more of like a spa-like setting for your aesthetics procedures. And then down here, we have an individual salon suite. This is another salon setting that is now available and has been becoming a lot more popular within the last 10 to 15 years, especially during COVID. So these are essentially set up. A lot of times 10 by 10s are the space that they're going to start with. There can be anywhere from 30 to 50 spaces inside of a building. And a lot of times they have their own door to close it off. So it's essentially like your own little salon space within a larger building. And these have, again, become more popular during COVID and stuff rather than renting inside of a large salon just for safety purposes. A lot of people felt more comfortable with that, but both options are available within the salon industry. And then last thing, I just have a couple of helpful links here. This first one is the Hair and Makeup Artists Union. And with the Hair and Makeup Artists Union, there's generally only two locations that offer this, and that would be LA and New York. There are some loopholes to this. You can live in San Diego and do work in LA and become a part of this. But essentially, the benefits of being a part of the Hair and Makeup Artists Union are that you are going to get a higher end or higher caliber of clientele. A lot of times, this is where celebrities are pulling their hair and makeup artists from, is from this union right here. And it's because you have to be able to work on a set, you have to do so many films or editorial projects in order to become a part of the union and essentially do that kind of work in order to get that credit. And with being a part of the Hair and Makeup Artists Union, that's where you're going to see the benefits of they have health benefits available to you. There's 401k plans that you can produce. And this is what you can do as an independent contractor and still be able to have those benefits available to you. Another good link is Professional Beauty Association. This one right here is great for keeping up on the industry as a whole. They cover everything across the nation as far as if any states have changed any laws and regulations. They'll let you know if there are any competitions coming up. Competitions are a ton of fun to do hair and makeup for. This again builds your credibility within the industry. And they will also let you know about new products and just new industry highlights and things that come out. So they are a great link and association to be a part of. And then last, I've listed Model Mayhem here. And the reason for that is, as a hair and makeup artist, if at any point you'd like to do film or editorial or runway even, a lot of times you're going to need to build your portfolio. And what that means is you will need to have professional photos of your work. So a good way to do that is joining something like Model Mayhem. And this is where artists of all kinds come together. This is models, photographers, hair and makeup artists. It can be clothing stylists and so forth. So they all come together and they'll either set up either a film or they'll have like a small film or they'll have a photo shoot coming up, and everybody comes together, does the work for it in the understanding that a lot of times it's what we call TFP or trade for print. And so this is to build your portfolio. Sometimes they are paid gigs, but again, this is for if you are really trying to get your portfolio work built and have those professional photos. And that concludes my presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love that. That was awesome. And I'd love to open it up for any questions. April, if you have any questions at all first.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing a little bit of maybe like some apprenticeship programs, internship programs? Like how do you get those different credentials for those different industries? Like what is
Yes.
required schooling wise? Is it a trade school? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. So if you are looking to get your cosmetology, barbering, aesthetics, or nail tech certification, you are going to want to look into a professional beauty school. And this is where you're going to get the training for your licensing, the hands-on training. You're going to get a lot of the book training. There are apprenticeship programs. There's not necessarily a specific location that does this. How the apprenticeship program works with State Board is a lot of times the licensed individual or licensed facility will have to apply in order to have State Board say yes, that you're able to teach someone else. And there will be the individual who is going to school. They have to do at least, I believe it's 30 hours within a beauty school facility or a State Board facility first before they can apply to the apprenticeship program. And what happens is they will submit an application to State Board to do the apprenticeship program. They will specify who they would like to be their instructor for that apprenticeship program. And if that person is approved to be the instructor, then once both are approved, the individual will go to that salon or that facility in order to gain their training. Now, the difference being is when you do your training through a beauty school or a barbering school, your licensing usually takes about 10 months for cosmetology if you're going full time. A lot of times, if you're going part time, it can take close to about a year and a half. With going to an apprenticeship program, because it's not at a State Board regulated facility, it's usually at a salon with an individual. It's a 2-year program. So there is a longer investment, but this does give you more flexibility with being able to have a job outside of that and so forth and working your hours around. So there is a difference in the way that you can gain the education for this. Now, the other thing is when you're looking into different beauty schools or barbering schools, really taking a look at a few things. First thing is, what is their State Board pass rate? This is something that you can find online. You can look up State Board pass rate for beauty schools across California or across the nation, and it should give you the percentage of pass rate that that school has. Anything that's above a 75% is pretty good. You definitely want something closer to 100%, but there is, again, a difference. Now, this being that you have what's called State Board, strictly State Board schools. This is where you're going to go. They're going to teach you everything you need to know to pass your State Board exam, but they are teaching you just State Board. They are not teaching you advanced techniques or any other techniques of when you're getting out into the field. So that is going to require a lot more ongoing education afterwards, which is on your part to be able to look into and explore. The other thing is there's 2 other types of schools. One is now what we call our frou-frou school, which is where they really focus a lot on the techniques and things and the cool stuff that you're going to do out in the industry and that look really cool, but they might not focus on State Board as much. So while this is a great, fun learning time, the goal is to get your license. So if you're not getting that appropriate training, again, looking at their pass rates without going into names of schools. So the other option is what I like to call more of a hybrid model. They will have a good chunk of time devoted to all of your State Board procedures, learning the basics of everything. But then once you're down on what they call the floor, where you're working on clients, they will start teaching you some of those advanced training techniques while also testing you on your State Board in between. So you want something that's kind of a good mix, also depending on budget. Usually the schools that are just strictly State Board are going to be a little bit cheaper because they're not paying for the frou-frou and frills. When you are paying for a name brand school that is more frou-frou, a lot of times you're paying for the name brand and you're paying for the fun look of it. You're not necessarily paying for being able to get your license. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at the price range, when you're looking at the pass rate, that this is all going to determine the type of education that you're going to get from these facilities.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just have a quick question. We've been asking a lot of our speakers, but what's kind of like maybe one of your favorite parts about working in this field, and maybe even a part that you're not so fond of?
Okay. My favorite part about this field is, for me personally, I've always loved doing hair and makeup. I love the idea of transforming someone and helping them to feel their best. This is probably the most rewarding thing when I have someone in my chair and they maybe come in from a stressful day or they've had a really hard time, and you do their hair and they just light up inside and they absolutely love how they feel and how they look. So that's one of the most rewarding parts. I've A lot of the professions or different areas or avenues that you can go into, I've worked in. So I've worked in spas and salons. I'm a current salon owner. I've been a makeup artist with Fashion Week San Diego for about 7 years now. And I can say that having the diversity within your tool bag is essential to really keeping things fresh and making sure that you're not getting burnt out on stuff. And so I really enjoy having all of those different avenues to go into so that I'm not feeling pigeonholed into one thing. As far as challenges, I will be very upfront. This is a physically demanding job. So it's really important to make sure that you are staying on top of stretching, that you are staying on top of keeping your muscles, especially for your back, really engaged. And the reason for this is you are bent and hunched over in very awkward positions sometimes over a shampoo bowl. If you're bending over and you're doing really meticulous things like with lashes and stuff, you're doing a lot of repetitive motions in really, like I said, awkward positions. So it's important to make sure that you're stretching. Yoga is really good for this as well. And I am kind of a candidate to show that I did not do enough stretching and now arthritis has set in after 20 years. So you can avoid all of these things by taking care of your body and doing the proper exercises and things to manage how your body's functioning in the field.
I love that. And something you don't like, I mean, once you mention it and you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, but something that's not necessarily on the forefront of your mind when you think about it. But
Right,
yeah, I mean, I can just imagine. I mean, just even sitting, how much of a difference like sitting in a chair all day would make on your back, but like bending over. I mean, I used to work in food industries and
right.
just bending over and like grabbing things like that all day did a number. So I can only imagine, especially with your fingers and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't think about it, but like those barbering chairs are incredibly heavy. And if you
Mhm.
have a gentleman that's laid back in this chair and now you need them to sit up, and if they can't sit themselves, you're a lot of times lifting the chair and this other human. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of lifting, a lot of bending in different positions, repetitive motions like with your shears and things, and even with highlighting, it's a lot of repetitive motion. So doing those hand stretches and making sure that you're practicing ergonomics, which is the study of making sure that your body positioning is right while you're doing your tasks, is really, really important.
Awesome. I love it. April, do you have any more questions at all?
Have you had any like really fun or exciting like experiences that maybe you might be able to just share one with us?
Yes. Um, so one of my top experiences that I've had within my career is actually back in 2021. I was one of four makeup artists that was selected from Fashion Week San Diego to fly out to New York, and I was in a competition out at Sotheby's in Manhattan. And it was in conjunction with the Art Renewal Center and Fashion Week San Diego. And we essentially had to come up with hair and makeup looks to go cohesively with these fashion pieces that the designers created. But the Art Renewal Center had submitted paintings, 9 different paintings, and our looks as well as the fashion piece had to go cohesively with these paintings. And so essentially we were creating living art. And once we were done with our models, they were put on display in Sotheby's next to the paintings as a living art next to these paintings. And I won first and third place with my models. So it was pretty exciting, pretty darn exciting.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
of
That's such a
course.
cool story.
Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
there's been a lot of fun times, a lot of photography, photo shoots and stuff. Like I said, doing Fashion Week San Diego and a lot of runway work, and really getting to express my creativity in between doing the day-to-day salon routine. So it's been really fruitful.
yeah, that's really cool. It sounds like it. I mean, it's like sounds like there's a good balance between kind of being able to flex that artistic creative muscle as well as kind of like your practical, um, kind of day-to-day stuff as well.
Yes.
Um,
And one other aspect of the industry that I'll maybe go over too is there are different avenues. How I was talking about freelance work. Freelance work is essentially where you're working for yourself, but you're going out to these gigs and you're, doing the hair and makeup for them. The other options are that you can be the salon owner. You can also work at a salon. Some of them will pay hourly, some pay hourly plus commission. So, a lot of times, what I recommend to stylists when they are first getting out into the field is to either have a mentor if you are deciding to rent right out of school, having a mentor and making sure that you are able to um, produce the results in order to build that clientele. Because once you're going out on your own, the business is not meant to produce the clientele for you. That's what you're supposed to do on your own. Now, if you're working for a business where they're paying hourly, they are actually going to provide the clientele for you. So there is a difference in the way that you're starting out. The other thing is there are apprenticeship programs at certain salons. And you'll have to look into each salon and whether they offer that. But some of them will offer a year-long internship where you are apprenticing someone and it's after you've gotten your license. This is a paid gig. A lot of times it's going to be paid hourly. And then you might get some tips from the clients, but you are working under a stylist to really learn those advanced training techniques after school. So there are those options after school to be able to do that. Again, you can go rental, you can start your own business, especially if you have a good network of other artists and things that will help to support you. And then making sure that staying on top of marketing and sales. A lot of artists get into hair and makeup thinking, I didn't get into this to do sales, but essentially, sales is a part of it. You have to not only sell yourself if you're an independent contractor, but your products that you sell to maintain someone's look. Their hair is an investment. If they're spending hundreds of dollars to get their hair done, they need to maintain that investment. So, selling products can actually produce up to 30% of your income if you can do it appropriately and recommend the right products. So sales is a part of it. It's something that you do have to get comfortable with because you're going to be talking to people all day long.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So I guess my last little question would just be for the students that weren't able to view
Hmm.
live, but maybe watch the video back on YouTube or on our career fair website, and have additional questions. Would you be okay if we were to filter through those and send you maybe like a list of those if anything comes
Absolutely.
up?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
April,
too.
do you have any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Breanna, again for coming on and sharing everything with us. I am super grateful for everything and all the information that you had to share for us.
Thank you
Um,
too. I really appreciate you guys having me.
yeah, and we'd love to have you again next year. So we'll
Fantastic. I
keep
would
in
love
touch.
that.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much. And everybody else, enjoy the rest of our career fair and all of our videos. And we'll see you in another one.